The world, in its vast and clamorous entirety, operates upon a grand deception. It is a theater of shadows, where the masses are taught that power is found in the outward expansion, the acquisition of credentials, the accumulation of capital, the conquest of social strata. They rise with the sun, or often before it, propelled by the jagged adrenaline of alarm clocks and the frantic, buzzing demands of a tethered digital existence. They are like sailors cast adrift in a storm, throwing their weight from side to side in a desperate attempt to balance a vessel that has no captain. Consider the paradox of the dawn. For the majority, the first 5 minutes of the day are an exercise in involuntary surrender. Before a single word is uttered, before a single conscious intention is set, the average human life is surrendered to the chaotic currents of the collective subconscious. They wake, and like a reflexive twitch of a limb, their hands reach for the black mirror, the smartphone, and in that singular gesture, they invite the world's anxieties, the industry's pressures, and the society's scarcity into the most sacred chamber of their being. They do not realize that they are standing upon a precipice. Behind them lies the long, dark stretch of the night, a void of silence where the mind has been busy weaving the tapestry of their future from the threads of their past. Ahead of them lies a day that has already been sabotaged by the frantic energy of their own awakening. There is a stillness in the morning air that is heavy with potential, yet it is a weight that few know how to bear. It is the silence that follows the symphony of sleep, a fleeting, golden interlude where the barrier between the mortal man and the infinite is rendered thin as gossamer. Most squander this time with a reckless abandonment that borders on the criminal. They are architects who, upon entering their drafting room at the start of the workday, immediately begin to burn the blueprints they were meant to design. The irony is as sharp as a blade. They seek prosperity in the high-stakes negotiations of the afternoon, unaware that the terms of those negotiations were written, signed, and sealed in the unguarded silence of their dawn. To grasp why the first 5 minutes dictate the trajectory of a lineage, one must first deconstruct the architecture of human consciousness. The mind is not a monolithic structure. It is a dual-layered reality. There is the conscious mind, the analytical, critical gatekeeper that patrols the borders of our daily logic. It is the captain of the ship, tasked with navigating the turbulent waters of social norms, economic realities, and interpersonal conflicts. But beneath the captain lies the engine room, the subconscious mind. It is a vast, tireless, and non-judgmental dynamo that does not distinguish between a dream and a reality, or between a suggestion and a command. Why does this matter in the stillness of the dawn? Because of the nature of brainwaves. As the veil of sleep lifts, the mind does not immediately snap into the rigid, guarded frequency of beta waves, the state of active, logical stress. It passes through the threshold of theta and alpha. In this state, the critical guardian is still drowsy, his sword lowered, his eyes heavy. The gate to the engine room is wide open. The subconscious, that wet cement of the soul, is ready to receive an imprint. The recursive question arises: how does one effectively imprint the subconscious? It is not done through force, for the subconscious is a faithful servant that obeys the strongest current of emotion, not the loudest demand of the will. If the captain wakes and immediately projects the vibration of anxiety, I am behind, I am broke, I am overwhelmed, the subconscious takes these not as laments, but as architectural specifications. It proceeds to manipulate the internal biochemistry of the body, adjusting the cortisol levels, narrowing the field of vision, and priming the neural pathways to perceive obstacles rather than opportunities. Why does the world remain poor? It is because the world is reactive. Humanity has been conditioned to believe that life is a response to external stimuli. They wait for the market to move before they act. They wait for approval before they thrive. But the master of the mind understands that reality is an inside-out process. By taking control of these 5 minutes, one is not merely practicing a ritual, one is engaging in a sovereign act of creation. The why of this discipline is the reclamation of divine agency. The how is the strategic application of silence, intention, and feeling, transforming the morning from a reactive collision with the world into a deliberate projection of reality. In a forgotten age, in a city carved from white stone and ambition, lived two brothers, Elian and Cael. Both were commissioned by the king to build a monument that would serve as the foundation for the city's next 100 years. Elian, driven by the frantic spirit of the age, began his work before the city had even fully awakened. He rushed to the construction site with his tools clattering, his mind already filled with the complaints of his workers, the rising cost of timber, and the looming deadlines. He began to stack stone upon stone, his hands moving with hurried intensity. Yet, because he had not spent a moment in the silence of the dawn to visualize the strength and beauty of the finished spire, his work was chaotic. He corrected his errors as he went, tearing down walls he had built in haste. The foundation was crooked, built on the shifting sands of his own agitation. When the storms came, his tower leaned, and the king looked upon it with disappointment. Cael, conversely, was known as the silent architect. Each morning, as the first light touched the peaks of the mountains, Cael would remain in his study, sitting in perfect, upright stillness. He did not touch a chisel or a stone for the first hour of his day. In that silence, he walked through the completed building in his mind. He felt the cool texture of the marble beneath his fingers. He calculated the load-bearing capacity of every arch. He envisioned the light filtering through the great dome. He did not build the structure with his hands until he had fully constructed it in the spirit. When he finally stepped onto the site, he moved with the unhurried grace of a man who was merely bringing into the physical world a reality that already existed in his consciousness. His tower stood for centuries, unmoved by the tempest, for it was rooted in the absolute certainty of a perfect design. The monument of your life is being built, day by day, stone by stone. Most live as Elian, frantically correcting the mistakes of a morning launched without a blueprint. The master lives as Cael, ensuring that before the first stone of the day is laid, the architecture of the entire structure is established in the sacred silence of the morning portal. The transition from a drifter to a master begins with the courage to do nothing. Tomorrow morning, when the first spark of consciousness returns to you, you are commanded to commit an act of rebellion. You are to remain in the darkness, body heavy and still, refusing to acknowledge the external world. You are to treat the bed as a sanctuary and the transition period as a state of high grace. This is your first task. Before your feet touch the cold reality of the floor, hold the space. Do not reach for the device of distraction. Do not allow the world to claim you before you have claimed yourself. You are the sovereign of these minutes, and the empire of your life is built upon what you do with this silence. As you lie there, feel the weight of your own potential. You are not a creature of circumstance, but the creator of it. You are stepping into the role of the architect. But to build such an empire, you must first clear the site of all debris. The drifter complains of the weight of the world. The master recognizes that he has invited that weight in. If you are truly ready to transmute your existence, you must signal your readiness. If you find that your spirit is stirring, if you realize that your potential has been buried beneath the rubble of reactive habits, you must stake your claim. In the comments below, write the declaration that alters the frequency of your soul. I am prosperous. These are not words of hope. They are the laws of your new identity. By anchoring this intention in the public record, you are signaling to the infinite that you are no longer a participant in the chaos, but a force of order. And there is more. To thrive in this new landscape, you must surround yourself with the frequency of mastery. If this first step has resonated with the deepest part of your being, subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell. By doing so, you are placing yourself within an environment of growth, ensuring that each week you receive the next vital key to your transformation. Yet, you may wonder, if the mind is the garden and the morning is the soil, what is the specific nature of the seeds we are about to plant? You have recognized the portal, but you have yet to learn the alchemy of the transition. You have held the silence, but you have yet to speak the commands that command the universe. The threshold is before you, and the darkness is fading. Are you ready to see what lies on the other side of the dawn? The next chapter awaits, and with it, the secrets of the resonance that shifts the very fabric of your reality. Imagine, if you will, a lake at the deepest hour of the night. It is a vast, ink-black expanse, undisturbed by the slightest breeze, its surface a perfect mirror for the infinite constellations above. This is the state of the human mind in the final, quiet tremors of sleep, a reservoir of pure, unmanifested potential. But as the horizon begins to bleed with the first pale violet of dawn, a singular transformation occurs. The surface of the water begins to shimmer. A gentle, rhythmic motion stirs the depths. This is not yet the waking world. It is not yet the chaotic, sun-drenched day of labor and demand. It is the liminal space, the twilight zone of the human soul. In this precise moment, you are neither fully of the spirit nor fully of the flesh. You are a bridge between the infinite and the finite. Most of humanity, however, treats this sacred threshold with the carelessness of a bull charging through a temple. They wake with a jolt, their hearts pounding in anticipation of the day's burdens, effectively shattering the mirror of the lake before they have even seen their own reflection. They do not realize that in this ephemeral span, this brief, suspended breath between the dream world and the physical, the brain undergoes a profound shift in its electrical architecture. The heavy, restorative currents of delta waves give way to the fluid, receptive rhythms of theta and alpha. It is here, in this golden haze, that you stand at the mouth of a portal. It is a doorway that remains ajar for only a heartbeat of universal time. It is a moment where the critical guardian, that cynical, analytical judge that dictates what is possible and what is impossible, is still held in the gentle grip of slumber. The door to the subconscious is not merely unlocked. It is wide open, inviting the impression of whatever thought, desire, or ambition you choose to carry across the threshold. To pass through this gate without a command is to leave your destiny to the winds of chance. To pass through with intention is to become the master of your own evolution. To truly master this portal, one must conduct a rigorous autopsy of the mind's operating system. Why is it that the conscious mind, which prides itself on its logic and strategic foresight, so often fails to manifest the abundance it claims to desire? The answer lies in the fundamental nature of the dual mind hierarchy. The conscious mind acts as the filter, the gatekeeper of reality. It is highly protective, constantly validating new ideas against the ledger of past experiences. If the conscious mind is presented with the concept of unlimited wealth while the bank account remains depleted, it immediately rejects the notion as a fiction, triggering a cascade of doubt and stress that effectively locks the gates to the engine room. The subconscious, however, is not a critic. It is a contractor. It is the vast, industrial engine room of the vessel, tasked with translating the blueprints provided by the captain into the machinery of physical manifestation. Why is the dawn the only time this contractor can be reached without interference? Because of the state of the neuroelectrical barrier. During the daylight hours, the conscious mind is engaged in the bombardment of external reality. It is busy defending itself, evaluating threats, and managing social status. In this state, it is nearly impossible to bypass the critical guardian to access the subconscious directly. But in the twilight of the morning, the barrier is down. The mind is in a state of natural hypnotic trance. How, then, do we optimize this, and what is the cost of failure? If the gate is open and you offer nothing, the subconscious will draw upon the debris of the previous day, the lingering anxieties, the unresolved arguments, the quiet fears of inadequacy, and begin to assemble them into the blueprint for the coming day. It will manifest precisely what it has been fed. The tragedy of the average life is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of programming. They are the victims of a chaotic, accidental, and repetitive loop. They are essentially painting a portrait of their future using only the discarded pigments of their past. To shift this, one must move from being a passive recipient of the morning to an active programmer of the soul. One must understand that the subconscious is like wet, unset cement. It is infinitely malleable, but only for those few, precious minutes before the sun hits the earth and the heat of the day hardens the mold into reality. In the high mountain valleys of a forgotten civilization, there lived a master gardener whose harvest was so abundant that the surrounding villages called his land the Blessed Orchard. While his neighbors struggled with thin soil and withered crops, his trees bore fruit of such size and sweetness that they were said to hold the very light of the sun within their flesh. A young man, Eager to replicate this success, approached the master and begged to know the secret. "Is it the water?" the youth asked. "Is it the fertilizer? Or perhaps the seeds you plant?" The master shook his head and gestured to a small wooden hut at the edge of the orchard. "The secret is not in the soil of the earth, but in the soil of the mind. I do not plant my seeds when the sun is at its height, for then the ground is baked hard and the wind is fierce. I go to my garden in the first gray light, while the dew is still heavy and the earth is soft and cool. In that silence, I speak to the seeds." The young man was confused. "You speak to the seeds? What could they possibly understand of your words?" The master smiled, a deep, knowing look in his eyes. "The seeds do not hear my words. They feel the vibration of my intent. I tell them of the abundance that will be. I tell them of the weight of the fruit they will bear. I give them the blueprint of the harvest before the heat of the day can dry them out. If I wait until the day is fully awake, the noise of the world and the harshness of the sun will drive the spirit from the seed. The secret is the timing. You must catch the earth while it is still in the dream of the night." The master then turned to his own plot, leaving the young man to realize the truth. The harvest was not a product of chance, but of a sacred, rhythmic dialogue held in the silence of the dawn. The blessed orchard was not an accident. It was the result of a mind that knew how to prepare the soil while the rest of the world was still asleep. The integration of this truth requires a shift in your fundamental behavior. You must no longer wake as a subordinate to your circumstances. You must wake as a monarch returning to his throne. The moment you stir, when you find yourself in that gray, formless state of half-wakefulness, you must declare your absolute authority. You are to remain in the posture of stillness, eyes closed, body relaxed, guarding the portal with a fierce, quiet intensity. This is the practical bridge to your transformation. Tomorrow, when you feel that first glimmer of awareness, do not move. Do not allow your limbs to thrash or your eyes to flutter open. Imagine that you are lying within a fortress of light. Within this sanctuary, the chaos of the world, the emails, the headlines, the demands of your peers has no access. You are holding the door to your subconscious wide open, waiting to deposit the gold of your intention. You are the architect, and you are currently drafting the blueprints that will dictate your performance for the next 16 hours. Reflect upon this. If you have spent your mornings as a servant to the noise of the world, how much of your life has been surrendered to the agendas of others? By staying still, you are effectively taking back the keys to your own house. If you are prepared to stand as the guardian of your own portal, confirm it by writing in the silence of your own mind or in the comments, "I am the architect." This is the oath of the master. But holding the portal is only the first step. A gate is useless if it leads to an empty room. You have protected the space, and you have set the timing. Now, you must learn what to place upon that canvas. We have prepared the foundation. We have opened the threshold. In the next chapter, we shall explore the mechanics of the cinema of the mind, the high-definition art of visualization that triggers the latent power of your nervous system. You are moving from the stillness of the guardian to the vision of the creator. The threshold is thinning, and the light is approaching. Are you ready to see what you are capable of building? The journey deeper into the vault continues. The dawn does not arrive with a fanfare of trumpets for the modern soul. It arrives with the sharp, artificial chirping of a digital sentry. The scene is universal. A room bathed in the sterile blue-gray light of a dying night. A hand, still heavy with the fog of dreams, snakes out from under the warmth of the quilt, fumbling across a nightstand with the practiced, desperate muscle memory of a captive. It finds the device, the black mirror, and in an instant, the sanctuary of the bedroom is violated. The screen glows, casting an eerie, spectral pallor upon the sleeper's face. What happens next is a silent, devastating ritual. Within seconds of consciousness, the individual is no longer in their room. They are in the trenches of 1,000 global conflicts. They are swimming in a toxic sea of algorithmic rage, envy, and manufactured urgency. They read a headline that stokes fear. Their heart rate accelerates. They see a notification that demands attention. Their brow furrows with the weight of unearned obligation. They scroll through the curated successes of strangers, A subtle, corrosive seed of not-enoughness is planted in the fertile, vulnerable soil of their morning mind. This is the tragedy of the masses. They trade their godlike potential for a handful of digital dust. They wake, and before their feet have touched the floor, they have surrendered the sovereignty of their day. They have not acted, they have been acted upon. They have invited the entire chaotic weight of a dysfunctional world into their sanctuary, effectively stamping their subconscious with the imprint of scarcity, subservience, and reaction. They have lost the war before the first shot was even fired. They are the architects of their own misery, building a prison cell by cell, swipe by swipe, starting precisely the moment they open their eyes. To understand the calamity of this morning reaction, one must examine the physiological and psychological hijacking taking place. Why does the modern human gravitate so compulsively toward this self-destruction? It is because the brain is wired for survival, not for mastery. For eons, our ancestors were programmed to scan the horizon for threats at the first light of day. Today, that ancient instinct remains, but it has been weaponized. The digital landscape is a landscape of perpetual, artificial threats. When you reach for your phone, you are essentially signaling to your brain, scan for danger. Find me something to worry about. Find me a reason to feel inadequate. Why is this fatal to your prosperity? Because of the state of your autonomic nervous system. By engaging with external demands and negative stimuli immediately upon waking, you trigger an immediate release of cortisol and adrenaline. You shift the brain's frequency from the receptive, creative alpha state into the defensive, survival-oriented beta state. You are literally hardening your wet cement with the chemicals of stress. How does this affect the long-term trajectory of a lineage? It creates a recursive loop of limitation. The subconscious, as established, is the engine room. If you feed it the data of lack, fear, and competition at the very moment it is most receptive, it interprets those feelings as your standing orders for the day. It will then work the entire day to confirm those feelings. You will encounter obstacles because your brain is subconsciously filtering out opportunities to focus on threats. You will feel fatigued because your body is being drained by the effort of fighting invisible digital enemies. Why do we keep doing this, even when we know it is destructive? It is the illusion of productivity. We have been conditioned to believe that to be informed is to be powerful. We believe that checking the inbox is an act of responsibility. But this is the great lie of the age. Productivity without alignment is merely moving faster toward a destination you do not want. The why behind this behavior is a fundamental misunderstanding of what work actually is. The master understands that the most important work of the day is the work you do on the machine, not with the machine. To react is to be a slave to the system. To act is to master the system. In the great port city of Ethelgard, there lived a merchant named Valerius. Valerius was known for his uncanny ability to foresee the ebbs and flows of the trade winds. While other merchants lost their fortunes to storms and shifting markets, Valerius's ships always returned, laden with gold and exotic spices. One morning, a younger merchant named Lysander, whose own fortune was crumbling, came to Valerius's villa. "Master," Lysander pleaded, "I wake before the cock crows. I spend my morning shouting orders to my clerks, poring over the ledgers, and listening to the rumors of the marketplace. Yet, my ships return empty. Why does fortune favor you when I exert so much more effort?" Valerius led the young man to a secluded courtyard, away from the roar of the docks. "Tell me, Lysander," Valerius asked, "when you wake, what is the first sound you hear?" "I hear the clamor of my servants, the bells of the city, and the grievances of my creditors," Lysander replied. "I make sure to hear them first, so I may be prepared for the day's battles." Valerius gestured to the silent, still pond in the center of the garden. "And when you gaze into that mirror, do you see your own reflection, or do you see the ripples of the pebbles thrown by others?" Lysander looked into the water, seeing only the chaotic reflections of the city walls. "I see the city," he whispered. "Exactly," Valerius said. "You wake up and you drown your mind in the echoes of the market. You are listening to the gossip of losers and the panic of the desperate. You are not a merchant, you are an echo. I, however, spend my first hour listening to nothing but the wind and the silence. I listen for the direction of the Spirit. I do not listen to the marketplace until I have first set the frequency of my own resolve. When I finally step into the city, I am not reacting to the rumors of the day, I am commanding the course of my own ships. Lysander realized that he had been spending his most vital hours amplifying the chaos of the world, while Valerius had been spending them refining the signal of his own intent. He had been a prisoner of the echoes, while Valerius was the master of the voice. The integration of this truth demands an immediate and total severance of your old habits. You must establish a perimeter of peace that the chaos of the world cannot breach. This is not merely a suggestion, it is a tactical necessity for your survival and prosperity. Your challenge, beginning tomorrow morning, is to impose a digital Sabbath of the first 60 minutes of your day. This is the first line of defense. The phone, that black mirror of distraction, is to be treated as a forbidden object until you have completed your internal work. You are to move through the house with intention, not reaction. If the world feels like it is burning, let it burn for 1 hour. Nothing in the external world is more urgent than the structural integrity of your own consciousness. By refusing to reach for the device, you are making a bold, authoritative statement to the universe. I do not belong to the world. The world belongs to me. Are you living a life of your own design, or are you merely a guest in the lives of others? Every time you check an email, you are answering someone else's call to action. Every time you scroll, you are fueling someone else's agenda. If you are ready to reclaim your territory and unplug from the matrix of distraction, signify your intent. In the space below, leave a testament to your newfound sovereignty. I am the master of my morning. By doing so, you are not just typing words, you are drawing a line in the sand. You are telling the universe that you are ready to stop being an echo and start being the voice. But you have only just begun to understand the power you possess. You have cleared the debris, and you have set the perimeter. Now, we must understand the mastermind, the principle that the titans of industry use to transmute their inner visions into empires of iron and gold. We are moving from the defense of the mind to the offensive, active command of the universal forces. The portal is clear, and the master is awake. Are you prepared to move from the protection of the fortress to the expansion of the kingdom? The next chapter will unveil the specific laws used by the giants of the 20th century to bend reality to their will. The resonance is building. Hold your ground. Imagine a sprawling, opulent study in the early decades of the 20th century. The air is thick with the scent of mahogany, imported tobacco, and the crisp, ozone-charged energy of ambition. Outside, the world is embroiled in the frantic, soot-stained industrial revolution, the roar of steam engines, the clash of steel, and the desperate scramble of a populace trying to survive in a rapidly modernizing landscape. Yet, inside this room, there is a silence so profound it feels heavy, like the stillness before a great storm. At the center of this silence sits a man who holds the reins of the age. He is not shouting orders, nor is he buried in the ledgers of his accountants. He is sitting perfectly still, his eyes closed, his breathing rhythmic and deep. To an outside observer, he appears to be doing nothing, an idling gear in a machine of constant production. But the reality is far more potent. He is engaged in a practice far more demanding than the labor of his thousands of workers. He is communing with the architecture of the future. This was the common denominator of the giants: Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison. They were labeled by their peers as lucky or gifted, but they understood a secret that the drifter will never grasp. They knew that the world they built was not forged in the factory, but in the sanctum of their own consciousness. They treated their mornings not as a starting line for physical toil, but as a holy sacrament. They were the masters of the morning because they were the masters of the internal frequency. While the rest of the world was reacting to the siren call of the factory whistle, these titans were dictating the terms of reality to the universe itself. The paradox is this: the men who moved the world were the men who spent the least amount of time rushing to do so. Why were these men capable of such extraordinary output? It was not because they possessed more hours in the day, but because they possessed a higher quality of presence. To deconstruct the mastermind principle in the context of the morning, one must move past the surface-level definition of networking. The true mastermind is an internal alignment, a meeting between the conscious desire of the human and the infinite intelligence of the universe. Why did they prioritize these moments of stillness? Because the Titans understood that the conscious mind, in its analytical state, is a bottleneck. It is too slow, too limited by what it has seen before. The infinite intelligence, however, operates outside of time and constraint. By entering the stillness of the morning, these men were essentially downloading instructions from a higher source. How does this work, and why does it feel so counterintuitive? The recursive thinking of success teaches us that we cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. Most people approach their business problems using the same mental loops: worry, analysis, past failures that led to the problems in the first place. The Titans, conversely, use the morning portal to shift their mental state entirely. They moved from a state of trying human effort to a state of knowing, divine alignment. They practiced a form of mental rehearsal so intense that, by the time they walked out into the world, the victory was already a memory. Why does this lead to massive wealth? Because the subconscious mind is a projector. If your inner state is one of struggle, the world will appear as a battlefield. If your inner state is one of command, the world will appear as a resource. The Titans were not working harder. They were working from a more powerful frequency. They realized that the infinite intelligence does not respond to greed or need. It responds to the vibration of conviction. They were not asking for success. They were vibrating at the frequency where success was the only logical outcome. The morning was their laboratory for creating that resonance, ensuring that every decision made that day was an extension of a truth they had already established in the silence. In the late 19th century, a young engineer visited the laboratory of a man who was rapidly becoming the master of the electric age. The engineer was baffled. He watched as his mentor spent the first 2 hours of every morning sitting in a chair, eyes closed, barely moving. No soldering irons, no blueprints, no prototypes. "Sir?" the engineer asked, emboldened by his confusion. "We have deadlines from the investors, and the assembly line is halted waiting for your design. Why do you spend these precious morning hours in silence while the plant struggles?" The master opened his eyes, and they burned with a strange, calm intensity. "You think I am idling," he replied, "but I am building the machine. I have to build it in my mind, perfectly, piece by piece, until I can see every bolt, every wire, and every connection. If I find a flaw in my mental model, I fix it there. If I struggle to make the gears move in my imagination, I realize my design is faulty. When I finally step to the workbench, I am not inventing. I am merely copying what I have already perfected. If I rushed to the bench without this morning session, I would spend weeks of failure trying to correct errors that my own haste created." The young engineer realized then that his own failures were not due to a lack of technical skill, but a lack of preparation. He had been rushing to do, while the master had been taking the time to be. The invention did not happen on the desk. It happened in the holy, quiet duration of the morning. When the master finally began to work, he worked with a speed and precision that looked like magic, but was, in truth, simply the physical manifestation of a completed mental structure. The Titan knew that haste is the enemy of brilliance. The integration of this to tangent-level discipline requires you to abandon the myth of the busy professional. You must redefine productivity. Productivity is not the volume of your movement. It is the quality of your impact. Your ritual tomorrow must shift from being a time filler to a time creator. To embody this, you must treat your morning stillness as a high-stakes executive meeting. You are the CEO of your own soul. You do not check your messages. You do not consult the market, and you do not listen to the anxieties of your peers. You sit in your boardroom, the silence of your own mind, and you review the agenda for the day. You project the results you expect, not as a hope, but as a mandate. You feel the satisfaction of the day's work before the work has even begun. If you have spent your life reacting to the demands of your environment, you are effectively letting others hold the title of CEO in your own life. Who is really in charge? If you are ready to stop being a laborer in the field of your life and start acting as the master architect, verify your resolve. In the space below, declare your position. I am the CEO of my destiny. This is the final step in establishing your internal command. By making this declaration, you are signaling to the infinite that you are ready to hold the reins. You have cleared the path, guarded the portal, and learned the mindset of the legends. But a leader without a strategy is a wanderer. You have the stillness, but you need the mechanics. We have laid the groundwork. We have established the posture of the conqueror. In the next chapter, we enter the specific 5-minute protocol. We will detail exactly how to execute the 5 phases that bridge the gap between human limitation and divine manifestation. The board is set, the pieces are in place. Are you ready to issue the orders that will change your reality? The ritual of the masters begins now. The moment of awakening is not a singular event. It is a precarious, fleeting transition, a bridge of gossamer light spanning the chasm between the void of unconsciousness and the turbulent ocean of the waking world. Most individuals perceive this transition as a mundane necessity, a biological reset button. They wake, they yawn, they rise, and they surrender to the gravity of their daily obligations. Yet, in this habitual collapse, they miss the most profound occurrence of the human experience, the stutter of the mind. Consider the sensory experience of the first few seconds of consciousness. You are in a state of suspended animation. The body is warm, heavy, and still. The mind is a blank slate, unburdened by the specific labels of my life, my problems, or my schedule. You exist in a state of pure potential being. It is a moment of divine neutrality. Now, observe the paradox. If you move, if you reach for the world, you shatter this stillness. You anchor your consciousness to the material realm of limitation. But if you remain still, if you hold your breath and your posture in the darkness behind your eyelids, you remain in the state of the alpha receiver. In this stillness, you are an instrument of infinite sensitivity. You are a radio tuned to the static of the universe, waiting for a signal. The average person, in their rush to inhabit their physical shell, misses this window, wasting the only 5 minutes of the day where they are essentially unplugged from the matrix of their own conditioning. They treat this golden interval as a nuisance to be bypassed rather than a laboratory to be occupied. They are like a master musician who, having the finest instrument in existence, deliberately smashes it against the floor before they even play a single note. To master the 5-minute protocol, one must move beyond the mystical and into the mechanistic. Why is this specific duration 5 minutes, the threshold of transformation? It is rooted in the architecture of the brain's transition. When the mind emerges from the delta waves of deep sleep, it does not immediately enter the beta waves of conscious, critical thought. It passes through the theta state, the realm of the subconscious. This window is brief, usually lasting no more than several minutes. If you do not claim this time, the world will claim it for you. Recursive thinking. Why must we remain physically still? Because the mind and the body are in a feedback loop. If you move, the brain sends a surge of neural signals to the muscles, effectively signaling that the work of the day has begun. This raises your heart rate, increases cortisol, and forces the brain into beta, the state of stress and survival. To remain still is to effectively trick the brain into believing that the environment is safe, stable, and under your command. This allows you to stay in the receptive state of theta, where you can program the subconscious without the conscious guardian challenging your desires. How does this protocol effectively reprogram the operating system? By engaging in a deliberate sequence of thought, you create a neural anchor. If you wake up and think, "I am tired," you create a neural pathway for fatigue. If you wake up and instead follow a structured sequence, gratitude, visualization, decree, purpose, and surrender, you create a superhighway for prosperity. You are essentially writing the code for your entire day. Why is the subconscious so susceptible to this? Because the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between a deeply felt, visualized memory and an actual, physical experience. When you perform the 5-minute protocol, you are giving the subconscious a false memory of success. The engine room, being a faithful servant, then works throughout the day to align your external reality to match that memory. You are creating a future memory. The why of this protocol is the hijacking of biological processes for the purpose of intentional creation. The how is the strict adherence to the 5 distinct phases of the protocol, ensuring that each minute is dedicated to a specific function of the soul. You are no longer reacting to your life. You are preemptively constructing it. In the golden age of maritime exploration, there was a navigator known as Captain Halloway, whose ships never once missed their destination, even in the thickest, most impenetrable fog. While other captains navigated by the shifting position of the stars or the uncertain currents of the sea, Halloway possessed a secret instrument, a small, intricate device kept in his private cabin. One night, as his fleet lay anchored in a dense fog that rendered the horizon invisible, a young ensign crept into the cabin. He expected to find maps, astrolabes, or complex mathematical tables. Instead, he found the captain sitting before a simple chart, tracing lines in the air with his finger. The captain was not looking at the sea. He was looking at a blank piece of parchment, moving his hand with a deliberate, rhythmic precision. "Captain," the ensign whispered, "how can you chart a course when you cannot see the stars? We are lost in the gray mist." Halloway turned, his eyes calm. "You see the mist, and you are lost because you rely on what you see. I do not navigate by the visible world. I navigate by the intended world. Before we left the harbor, I mapped this route in my mind, every current, every reef, every wind. I traced this path in my internal chart while the sea was calm. Because I built the path in my mind with such clarity, my hands now follow the plan automatically. I am not waiting for the stars. I am following the map I have already committed to my soul." The ensign realized that the captain was not guessing. He was not reacting to the fog. He had pre-navigated the journey. When the captain finally took the wheel, he steered not with hesitation, but with the authority of a man who had already arrived. The fog was irrelevant because the captain was living in the reality of the destination, not the confusion of the journey. He had done the work in the stillness of his cabin, and thus, he possessed the mastery of the sea. The embodiment of this truth begins with your next rising. You are to treat your bedroom not as a place of rest, but as a command center. You are the commander of your destiny, and the next 5 minutes are the most important operation of your life. Tomorrow morning, when the first light touches your eyelids, you must resist the urge to move. This is the ultimate test of your will. Do not check the time. Do not wonder about the chores. Do not think of the emails waiting in the digital abyss. Stay in the darkness. You are the architect, and your mind is the drafting table. You have 5 minutes to build the blueprint for your day. How much of your life has been lost to the fog of a reactive morning? By staying still, you are stepping out of the mist and onto the deck of your own vessel. You are finally taking the wheel. If you are ready to master the mechanics of your own reality and walk the path of the navigator, solidify your resolve. Write, with the intent of a commander, "I am the navigator of my reality." By doing so, you are committing to the discipline of the 5-minute hold. You are signaling to the universe that you have the focus required to handle the prosperity you are about to manifest. You have the perimeter, you have the posture, and now you have the protocol. But the protocol is only a vessel. It needs the fuel of a specific, high vibrational state to function. In the next chapter, we descend into the first minute, the vibration of gratitude. We will explore how to strike the tuning fork of your soul, moving your frequency from the static of lack to the symphony of abundance. The silence is calling. The portal is waiting. Are you ready to begin the work of the first minute? Your ascension is merely a matter of minutes away. The world is a cacophony of want. Observe the average individual as they emerge from the chrysalis of sleep. They are a walking vessel of deficiency. Before their vision has fully cleared, their mind is already traversing a landscape of missing pieces. They wake up and immediately inventory their burdens, the looming debt, the unresolved conflict, the perceived inadequacy of their station, the lack of time, the lack of energy, the lack of love. It is an involuntary prayer to the universe for more of what they do not have. They strike the note of lack, and the universe, being a perfect mirror, echoes that vibration back in the form of further struggle. Consider the sensory reality of this state. The chest is tight, the breath is shallow, and the muscles are braced for a battle that hasn't started. The individual is essentially a radio receiver tuned to the frequency of poverty. They exist in a state of perpetual not yet, a limbo where prosperity is forever deferred because the heart is firmly anchored in the feeling of absence. Yet, there is a profound paradox that remains invisible to the masses. The most powerful magnetic force in the cosmos is not the desperation of the beggar, but the sovereign acknowledgement of the king. Gratitude is not a polite social grace or a soft-hearted sentiment to be displayed during holidays. It is a precise, immutable law of energy. When one strikes the note of gratitude in the stillness of the dawn, they are not merely expressing thanks. They are performing a quantum reconfiguration of their own reality. They are instantly realigning their personal frequency with the frequency of infinite intelligence. It is the moment the tuning fork of the soul is struck, causing the entire apparatus of the mind to resonate with the harmony of abundance. To master the first minute, one must deconstruct the physics of gratitude. Why is gratitude the foundational vibration? Because gratitude is the psychological state of ownership. When you are grateful, you cannot simultaneously be in a state of wanting. Wanting implies that you lack. Gratitude implies that you possess. When you vibrate gratitude, you are essentially telling the universe that the object of your desire is already a settled fact. Recursive thinking. How does this bypass the analytical gatekeeper of the mind? When the mind is in the theta state, the twilight of the morning, it is highly suggestible. If you force yourself to feel genuine, warm-blooded gratitude for something that has not yet manifested, you are creating a cognitive dissonance that the subconscious mind cannot tolerate. The subconscious sees the feeling of having the gratitude and the absence of the physical object, and it immediately sets to work to resolve that tension. It does this by orchestrating circumstances, synchronicities, and opportunities to bring the external reality into alignment with the internal state of having. Why does this work when traditional willpower fails? Willpower is the weapon of the ego, and it is exhausting. Gratitude is the surrender of the ego to the higher law. When you ask how you can force this state, you find the answer in the anatomy of the present moment. You must first ground yourself in the miracle of your own existence. You are a biological masterpiece. Your heart beats without your command. Your lungs draw breath from a living atmosphere. And your consciousness, that spark of the divine, is currently housed in a vessel that can contemplate the stars. How do you expand this into the realm of the unseen? The adept learns the secret of preemptive gratitude. They do not wait for the reward to be handed to them. They offer thanks for the coming harvest. This is the ultimate act of faith. By thanking the Creator for the wealth that is currently moving toward you, you are effectively collapsing the distance between desire and manifestation. You are saying, I trust the process of the universe more than I trust the limitation of my current bank account. This shifts your identity from a desperate seeker to a sovereign receiver. You are no longer trying to get something. You are simply preparing the room for its inevitable arrival. In the high, wind-swept plains of the East, there lived a master weaver named Zafir. Zafir was renowned for producing tapestries that seemed to shift their colors as the light changed, depicting scenes of such vibrant beauty that they were sought by royalty across the world. His loom was old, his wool was simple, and his workshop was humble. Yet, his work eclipsed that of the court artisans. A wealthy merchant, frustrated by his own attempts to recreate Zafir's tapestries, visited the weaver. I have bought the finest silk, the most expensive dyes, and hired the greatest apprentices, the merchant complained. Yet my tapestries remain dull and lifeless. What is your secret? Do you use a golden thread? Do you possess a hidden dye? Zafir laughed and led the merchant to his loom. I use the same thread as you, he said, but you start each tapestry with a sense of urgency. You fear the failure of the design. You worry about the cost of the materials. You look at your finished work and see only the flaws. You weave with the tension of wanting to be great. And you? The merchant asked. I begin each day by sitting in the silence of the dawn, Zafir replied. I look at my empty loom and I feel a profound, overwhelming gratitude for the thread I have, the light I have, and the design that is already waiting in the spirit. I do not weave to create beauty. I weave to release the beauty that is already there. When I am grateful for the work, the thread behaves differently. It moves with a grace that fear cannot summon. I am not trying to weave. I am allowing the tapestry to manifest through me. The merchant realized then that the golden thread was not a physical material. It was the state of heart with which the weaver approached the loom. Zafar's work succeeded because he had already completed the tapestry in his spirit through the act of gratitude. He was not struggling with the wool. He was celebrating its existence. And in that celebration, the work became effortless, and the result, legendary. The embodiment of the first minute requires you to become a practitioner of radical appreciation. When you wake tomorrow, you are to ignore the demands of the day for just 60 seconds. You are to turn your attention, like a laser, toward the miracle of being. Begin by acknowledging the grace of your own life. Feel the warmth of the covers, the air in your lungs, the beating of your heart. Thank the Creator for the gift of another day, a clean, empty page upon which you can write your destiny. But do not stop there. This is where you become an adept. Transition from the gratitude of the present to the gratitude of the proactive. Lean into the feeling of your desires as if they are already realized. Feel the relief of the debt being settled. Feel the joy of the project being completed. Feel the security of the life you are building. Offer a silent, thunderous thank you for these things, even as you lie in the dark. If you could feel the relief of your success right now, what would your body feel like? What would your face look like? If you can feel it, you are already magnetizing it. If you are ready to stop begging and start vibrating at the frequency of the King, signify your intent. In the space below, lock your frequency. I am aligned with abundance. By doing so, you are anchoring your gratitude to the bedrock of your character. You have now established the foundation of the first minute. You have tuned the instrument. But a tuned instrument is useless without a song. You have the vibration of having, but you need to see the what. You have prepared the soil. Now, you must plant the seed. In the next chapter, we enter the second minute, the cinema of the mind. We will learn how to project the high-definition vision of your future onto the screen of your subconscious. The film is ready to roll. Are you ready to see your masterpiece? The light is turning on. Imagine a vast, silent theater at the center of your own consciousness. The house lights are dimmed, the velvet curtains are drawn, and the air is charged with the electric potential of a film that has yet to be screened. This is not a dream, nor is it a fantasy. It is the most sophisticated laboratory of creation in the universe. Most of humanity, however, spends its entire existence wandering through the lobby of this theater, never once realizing that the projector room is unlocked. The lens is clean, and the screen is waiting for the master's hand to set the reel in motion. Observe the irony of the common man. He is perpetually obsessed with the external screen, the flickering, often dismal reality of the physical world. He watches the headlines of his bank balance, the projections of the economy, and the drama of his interpersonal conflicts with the intensity of a captive audience. He believes he is a critic of his life, but he is merely a spectator. He does not realize that the physical world is not the primary experience. It is merely the projection of a film that he has been inadvertently running in the theater of his mind for years. In the second minute of the dawn, the portal is wide open. The critical guardian is asleep. The theater is empty, and you are the only one holding the ticket. Here, the paradox reveals itself. The material world is not the cause, but the effect. Everything you see, the architecture of the skyscrapers, the currency in your account, the very chair you sit upon, existed as an invisible impulse in the mind of a creator before it took form in space and time. To change the projection, you must change the film. You are stepping into the private cinema of your imagination to preview the reality you are about to manifest. This is not idle daydreaming. This is the heavy, sacred lifting of the spirit. This is the moment you transition from a victim of circumstances to the director of your own unfolding legend. To master the second minute, One must dismantle the false notion that visualization is a passive act. It is, in truth, an architectural operation of the highest order. Why is it that the majority of humanity attempts to visualize their success and yet fails to see it manifest? The answer lies in the absence of sensory immersion and emotional intensity. They view their future success from the audience. They see themselves as third-party observers, distant and detached, watching a version of themselves succeed. The subconscious mind, however, is not fooled by this distance. It requires you to inhabit the lens. Recursive thinking. How do we bypass the subconscious's skepticism? By engaging in the alchemy of the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must ask, why do we feel the need to see it with our eyes before we believe it in our hearts? Because the physical senses are conditioned to trust the echo, the past, more than the source, the mind. How do we reverse this? We must treat the imagination as a memory of the future. You are not hoping for a result. You are recalling a victory that has already occurred in the quantum field. Why is the high-definition detail of the visualization so critical? The nervous system is a biological transducer. It converts mental images into chemical signals. When you visualize with clarity the color of the desk, the weight of the pen, the sound of the applause, the scent of the mahogany, your brain releases the same neurotransmitters it would release if the event were occurring in the physical realm. By stimulating the senses, you are literally creating a memory of the future. You are building a neural pathway for the success that will eventually pull the physical events toward you like iron filings to a magnet. Why is emotion the missing fuel? Emotion is the electricity of the mind. An image without an emotional charge is a cold, dead photograph, a blueprint without a builder. When you marry a precise image with the visceral, high-energy feeling of relief, gratitude, or pride, you create a magnetic field. You are no longer just looking at a vision. You are broadcasting an electromagnetic signature. You are notifying the universe of your arrival. You are not waiting for the event to happen. You are collapsing the timeline by behaving as if the event is already a present, immutable fact. This is the secret of the masters. They don't wait to feel successful until the money arrives. They feel successful until the money is compelled to appear. In a land known for its marble, there lived a sculptor named Silas, who was commissioned by the High Council to create a statue that would represent the spirit of the nation. For 3 months, Silas did not lift a single chisel. He spent his mornings in his studio, sitting before a massive, unshaped block of cold gray stone. He would sit for hours, his eyes fixed upon the rock, until the stone seemed to dissolve in his vision. One morning, the High Council came to inspect his progress. They found the studio exactly as they had left it. The stone remained uncarved, untouched, and dull. "You have been hired to sculpt," the head counselor demanded, his voice thick with indignation. "Yet you have done nothing but stare at a rock. Where is the figure? Where is the spirit?" Silas smiled, his eyes calm. "The figure is finished, sir. It has been finished for weeks." The counselors laughed. "Then why is the stone still a block?" "Because," Silas explained, "you are looking at the rock, but I am looking at the statue. I have spent these weeks removing the excess stone in my mind, grain by grain, until I see the figure so clearly that it stands before me as if it were carved in gold. If I were to touch the chisel before the statue was perfectly finished in my sight, I would strike the stone in error. I would crack the marble. I have already freed the statue from the rock. Now, I am simply going to remove the stone that keeps you from seeing it." Silas then picked up his mallet. With a speed and accuracy that bordered on the divine, he began to work. He did not hesitate. He did not measure. He did not look at drawings. He worked with the certainty of a man who was merely cleaning a window to reveal a view that already existed. Within days, the figure was revealed, a masterpiece of such profound detail that it seemed to breathe. Silas had succeeded because he had mastered the cinema of the mind. He had built the statue in the light of his imagination, and in doing so, he had already finished the work before the first chip of stone hit the floor. The integration of this truth requires you to become the director of your own reality. In this second minute, you are to enter your theater. You are not merely a spectator. You are the lead actor, the screenwriter, and the audience all at once. Project your definite chief aim onto the screen of your closed eyelids. See it with the clarity of a high-definition vision. Do not merely look at yourself from afar. Look through the eyes of your future self. If you are visualizing a new business, feel the weight of the contract in your hand. Hear the sound of the doors closing behind you. Smell the crisp, clean air of your new office. Now, add the fuel. Summon the emotion. Feel the deep, soul-settling relief that the struggle is finally over. Feel the quiet pride of a task perfectly completed. Hold this feeling as if your very life depended on it, for, in a very real sense, it does. You are sculpting your destiny in the dark. If you have spent your life hoping for a better future, you have been waiting for someone else to hold the projector. How much longer will you sit in the dark waiting for a movie that someone else has produced? If you are ready to take the lens and focus the light of your ambition, seal your resolve. In the space below, lock your vision. I am the director of my reality. By doing so, you are committing to the work of the second minute. You have tuned the instrument, gratitude, and you have projected the masterpiece, vision. But even a masterpiece needs a name, a signature, and a decree. You have seen your future. Now you must claim it as your own. In the next chapter, we enter the third minute, the decree of identity. We will learn how to use the two most powerful words in the human language, I am, to frame the universe according to your command. The theater is buzzing, the lights are dimmed, and the vision is set. Are you ready to speak your identity into existence? The decree is the final stamp on the contract of your fate. We proceed to the authority of the word. There exists a profound, almost terrifying silence in the moment following a grand proclamation. Imagine a king stepping onto a balcony to address a restless, discordant empire. The air is thick with the clamor of 1,000 opinions, the frantic cries of the fearful, and the dull, rhythmic thrum of collective uncertainty. Yet, as the king raises a hand, the noise dies. He does not ask for permission. He does not plead for a better outcome. He simply speaks. His words do not describe the world as it is. They define the world as it shall be. In that instant, the chaotic energy of the crowd aligns, shaped by the sheer weight of a voice that knows its own authority. Most of humanity, however, spends their lives whispering to the universe as if they were beggars pleading for crumbs. They wake and mutter to themselves, I hope I can handle the day, or I wish I could be more successful. They treat their own thoughts as suggestions that the universe might, if it is feeling generous, take into consideration. They are like men standing before an ocean, shouting their desires into the gale, wondering why the tides refuse to alter their course to suit their needs. The paradox of power is this. The universe is not a listener. It is a responder. It does not obey the frantic petitions of the desperate. It obeys the resonant command of the sovereign. In the third minute of your morning ritual, you must transcend the language of hope and enter the language of law. You are no longer a subject of your circumstances. You are the architect of your identity. You are about to use the two most powerful words in the human lexicon, I am, to frame your reality. To speak these words is to cast a die that cannot be returned to the hand. To speak them is to set the gravitational pull of your entire day. To master the third minute, one must undertake a rigorous deconstruction of the decree. Why are the words, I am, the foundational code of human experience? Because they are the only words that bridge the gap between the finite ego and the infinite source. When you say I am, you are not merely stating a status. You are claiming an identity. You are defining the borders of your existence. Everything you place after those two words becomes the architecture of your fate. If you say, I am tired, you are issuing a biological command to your system to produce fatigue. If you say, I am broke, you are commanding the universe to mirror that lack in your external affairs. Recursive thinking. How do we hijack this mechanism to produce abundance? The process requires us to face the guardian of the threshold, the internal critic that mocks our decrees. Why does the critic exist? It is the repository of your past. It is the ego's way of protecting you from the pain of disappointment by tethering you to the certainty of what has always been. How do we silence it? We do not argue with it. To argue is to acknowledge its validity. Instead, we perform the override. Why is repetition the secret to this override? Because the subconscious mind, as a faithful contractor, operates on the principle of frequency. If a lie is repeated with enough emotional intensity, the subconscious eventually accepts it as a foundational truth. By decreeing your identity daily, you are effectively washing the brain. You are scrubbing away the accumulated soot of societal conditioning and replacing it with the bright, sharp iron of your chosen truth. How does this manifest as wealth? The self-image acts as a thermostat. You can never consistently outperform your own self-image. If your internal thermometer is set to struggle, you will sabotage every opportunity that threatens to move you into the comfort of abundance. But when you use the third minute to reset your thermostat to prosperous, you change your unconscious behaviors. You begin to walk with the gait of a master. You speak with the precision of a leader. You spot the deals the drifter misses. You are not getting rich. You are becoming the person to whom wealth is an inevitable consequence. The why is the reclamation of the divine right to self-definition. The how is the iron-willed repetition of the decree until the roar of your conviction drowns out the whisper of your history. In the ancient empire of Oros, there was a king who was not born to the throne. He was a stonecutter, a man whose hands were calloused and whose life was defined by the relentless, dusty labor of the quarries. Yet, as a young man, he had made a decree. Every morning, before his chisel touched the rock, he would look at his reflection in a mountain pool and say, "I am the king of Oros." His fellow workers mocked him. "Look at the king of the rocks," they would jeer. "Does your crown feel heavy today?" They lived in the reality of their calluses, their poverty, and their exhaustion. But the stonecutter did not respond. He ignored the mockery, for he was not living in the reality of the quarry. He was living in the reality of his decree. He studied the way the nobles spoke. He watched the way the leaders made decisions. He walked with the posture of a king, even when he was covered in white dust. He treated every stone he cut as if it were a brick for the palace he would one day rule. When the empire fell into chaos and the line of succession was broken, the people did not look for a politician or a strategist. They looked for the man who carried himself with the quiet, unshakable authority of a ruler. When they found the stonecutter in the quarry, he did not look surprised. He did not look like a man who had been plucked from obscurity. He looked like a man who was finally stepping into his inheritance. His coronation was not the beginning of his reign. It was merely the physical confirmation of the identity he had held in secret for 20 years. The people were amazed that he ruled with such wisdom and peace. They did not understand that he had been practicing for the throne in the silence of the quarry, long before he ever wore the crown. He had used the power of the decree to shape his soul into the vessel that the kingdom required. The integration of the third minute requires you to abandon the prayer of the beggar and adopt the decree of the master. You are not asking for a better life. You are defining the life that is already yours. As you lie in the stillness of your morning, take command of your identity. Pronounce your truths with an intensity that vibrates in your very marrow. Speak these words, either aloud or in the silent chamber of your mind. I am an open channel for the infinite abundance of the universe. I am a master of my focus, a creator of my reality, and a magnet for opportunity. I am prosperous in every cell of my body, and my wealth is a tool for the lifting of others. Do not rush. Taste the power of the I am. Let it cleanse your self-image. Feel the resistance of your logical mind and crush it with the weight of your authority. You are the monarch of your experience. If you could truly accept that you are already the person you wish to be, how would you carry yourself through the rest of this day? What hesitation would vanish? What fear would be revealed as an illusion? If you are ready to stop begging for scraps and start claiming your birthright, signify your intent. In the space below, set your decree, I am the architect of my identity. By doing so, you are casting your vote for the new self. You have tuned the instrument, projected the vision, and issued the decree. But a king requires a purpose for his kingdom. Wealth without a foundation of meaning is merely vanity. You have claimed your identity. Now, You must anchor it to the noble purpose that will fuel your engine when the storms arrive. In the next chapter, we enter the fourth minute, the anchor of purpose. We will connect your desire for gold to the service of humanity, ensuring that your prosperity becomes an unstoppable force. The throne is waiting, and the crown is being prepared. Are you ready to discover the why that justifies your I am? We move into the heart of the mission. There is a hollow quality to gold when it is pursued solely for the sake of its own accumulation. Picture the summit of an empire, a gilded fortress built upon the peak of a mountain. Inside, the master of this estate sits upon a throne of cold, polished bullion. He has achieved the objective, the fortune is secured, the adversaries are vanquished, and the legacy is codified in stone. Yet, as the shadows lengthen across his velvet-draped halls, he is plagued by a restlessness that no currency can assuage. He discovers a haunting paradox. The more he has amassed, the less he feels the vibrant, pulsing joy of existence. His ambition, once a roaring fire that fueled his ascension, has become a cold ash. Observe the lives of those who chase prosperity as a final destination. They run with the fury of the hunted, motivated by the fear of poverty or the desperate need to prove their worth to an empty sky. They treat success as a hoard to be protected rather than a power to be exercised. In this pursuit, they create a brittle reality. They build their houses on the shifting sands of ego, and when the tempests of life inevitably arrive, their monuments do not stand, they shatter. They realize, too late, that wealth without a foundation of meaning is merely vanity, a gilded cage that isolates the soul from the very flow of life it sought to control. The fourth minute of your ritual is the most critical intervention in your spiritual trajectory. It is the moment you move from the solitary pursuit of getting to the monumental calling of serving. It is here that you realize the universe does not grant permanent stewardship of its resources to the selfish. The universe is a distributor of energy. It flows toward those who act as a conduit, not a dam. To anchor your prosperity to a purpose that transcends your own skin is to initiate a covenant with the infinite. You are no longer just a builder of wealth. You are a partner in the evolution of the world. To master the fourth minute, one must apply the most rigorous psychological audit to the nature of ambition. Why does the human ego constantly sabotage its own success through the mechanism of guilt? Because deep within the subconscious of the average person lies the erroneous belief that prosperity is a finite resource, that for them to have more, someone else must have less. This creates a psychological break. Every time the person approaches a threshold of significant wealth, their subconscious, fearing the moral consequences of their greed, pulls the emergency cord. Recursive thinking. How do we neutralize this break? We do so by establishing a definite purpose that justifies the wealth. Why does a purpose release the brake? Because when your ambition is tied to the relief of others, the expansion of beauty, or the solution of human suffering, your brain stops viewing wealth as a selfish indulgence and starts viewing it as a logistical necessity. How does this shift the internal frequency? It transforms your why from I want to have to I must have so that I can provide. Why is the law of compensation the absolute governing force of your bank account? It states that the amount of wealth you receive is always in direct proportion to the value you render. When you link your success to the betterment of the whole, you are no longer competing in a zero-sum game. You are participating in a creative one. You are essentially telling the universe, I am a reliable steward. If you grant me these resources, I will multiply them in the service of your creation. This transforms your desire from a desperate, trembling grasp into a confident, regal offering. How do you build this anchor in the stillness of the dawn? By moving past the superficial desires of the ego, the cars, the status, the comfort, and asking the soul what it truly requires to feel fulfilled. Does your success buy back time for a parent? Does it fund the education of those without a voice? Does it create a product that alleviates the daily struggle of your peers? This is not about sacrificing your desire for wealth. It is about supercharging it. When your goal is too big to be selfish, you tap into a reservoir of energy that the self-serving person never accesses. You become impossible to stop, because your mission is no longer about you, it is about the legacy you leave behind. In the arid reaches of the southern desert, there lived two clans of farmers. One clan, the Avaris, spent their days digging frantic, shallow wells. They were motivated by the fear of thirst. Every time they struck a vein of water, they would build high walls around it, charging their neighbors for every drop and fighting viciously to prevent anyone else from finding their source. Their wells were always small, and in the heat of the summer, they consistently ran dry, forcing the clan to fight even harder to survive. The other clan, the Lumina, had a different approach. Their leader, a woman of great wisdom, taught them to dig a single, massive, deep well at the center of the valley, a grand well. Before they dug, they spent their mornings in deep contemplation, visualizing not just the water, but the entire valley flourishing. They dug with the explicit purpose of ensuring that every traveler, every animal, and every neighboring farmer would never know the pain of drought. As the years passed, the Avaris clan grew thin and weary, consumed by the guard duty of their small, murky puddles. But the Lumina clan prospered beyond measure. Because their well was meant for the service of the many, it seemed to strike a deeper current of the earth, a spring that was fed by the mountain snows. Their prosperity became an engine of growth. They built schools. They cultivated gardens. They became a beacon that drew the best minds and the most skilled tradesmen to their gates. They did not have to hoard their wealth, for the more they served, the more the spring flowed. The secret was not in the digging, it was in the intent of the water. The Avaris had dug for themselves, and they were rewarded with the limited yield of a selfish desire. The Lumina had dug for the world, and they were rewarded with the inexhaustible abundance of a universal purpose. The grand well was never empty, because the Lumina understood that they were not the owners of the water, they were merely its custodians. The embodiment of the fourth minute requires you to pivot your ambition toward the horizon of impact. You are not just building a life, you are building a cathedral. In this fourth minute of your morning, visualize the ripple effect of your prosperity. Do not look at the bank statement. Look at the faces of the people whose lives will be fundamentally altered by your victory. See your parents resting in comfort because of your labor. See your children growing up with the security of a legacy that breeds confidence, not entitlement. See yourself writing the check that shifts the trajectory of a struggling community. Feel the weight of this responsibility, and let it fill you not with dread, but with a profound sense of dignity. This is your why. This is the fuel that will keep the engine running when the market is volatile and the critics are loud. If your success today were directly linked to the flourishing of 100 other souls, would you have any room for procrastination? Would you have any room for small-minded fear? If you are ready to anchor your wealth to a mission that gives your life transcendent meaning, sign your covenant with the infinite. In the space below, declare your purpose: my prosperity serves the greater good. By doing so, you are lifting the brake of guilt from your subconscious and inviting the full, uninhibited flow of universal wealth. You have built the entire structure. You have gratitude, vision, identity, and now the righteous anchor of purpose. You are ready to receive, and you are ready to give. Yet, there remains one final, paradoxical mystery. The most powerful act of the Master is not to hold on, but to let go. You have done the work. Now, you must trust the harvest. In the next and final chapter, we enter the fifth minute, the Great Surrender. We will learn the art of detachment, the "it is done" protocol that allows the universe to bring your vision into the light. The morning is almost gone, and your day is waiting. Are you ready to release the oars and let the current carry you to the shore of your destiny? The finish line is in sight. The morning has reached its zenith within the sanctuary of your mind. You have traversed the landscapes of gratitude, charted the territory of your vision, decreed the sovereign truth of your identity, and anchored your ambition to the bedrock of purpose. The seeds are planted. The soil is fertile. Now, you stand before the final, most intoxicating, and most paradoxical threshold of the Master's journey, the precipice of release. Observe the frantic anxiety of the common gardener. He plants his seed in the morning, And by noon, he is on his hands and knees, digging into the earth with trembling fingers to see if the roots have taken hold. He worries about the rain, he frets over the quality of the soil, and he curses the slow pace of the sun. In his frantic trying, he destroys the very life he seeks to nurture. This is the condition of the human ego. It demands the harvest before the gestation is complete. It operates on a timeline of fear, believing that if it does not exert constant, suffocating control, the universe will fail to deliver the promise. The paradox of the fifth minute is the realization that the doing is finished. The work has shifted from the realm of human labor to the realm of divine operation. To try to control the how of your manifestation now is not an act of strength. It is an act of supreme arrogance. It is an admission that you do not trust the infinite intelligence you just spent 4 minutes invoking. To let go is not to give up. It is to move into a state of absolute, unshakable confidence. It is the moment the archer releases the string. He does not chase the arrow to guide it. He has already aimed. He has already exerted his effort. And now, he stands in quiet, certain expectation of the bullseye. To master the fifth minute, one must embrace the philosophy of detached expectation. Why is this final phase the point where 90% of aspirants sabotage their own success? Because they are addicted to the adrenaline of the struggle. They have spent their lives believing that if they are not worried, they are not working. They mistake their anxiety for a form of productivity. Recursive thinking. How does this manifest as a failure of faith? When you worry, you are essentially praying for the things you do not want. You are telling the universe that you do not believe the order you placed will be delivered. You are acting like a patron who orders a meal at a fine restaurant, only to immediately run into the kitchen to grab the spatula from the chef's hand. You are hindering the process. Why does the universe require this surrender? Because manifestation is a collaborative act. You provide the blueprint, but the universe provides the construction crew. The how, the specific people, the fortuitous meetings, the economic shifts, is the business of the infinite. To micromanage the how is to limit the infinite to the narrow, linear pathways of your own limited experience. How do we cultivate this state of surrender? We do it through the architecture of the breath. Why the breath? Because the breath is the bridge between the conscious and subconscious, the physical and the spiritual. By using the breath to exhale the need for control, you are performing a biological reset. You are signaling to your nervous system that the mission is accomplished. How does this lead to inevitable success? By releasing the timeline. Time is a variable of the material world, but it is an illusion to the infinite. Whether your prosperity manifests today, next week, or next month is irrelevant, for it is already a fact in the quantum field. The why of this surrender is the recognition of your own limitlessness. The how is the daily practice of it is done. You are moving from a vibration of trying, which implies resistance, to a vibration of trusting, which is the state of flow. This is the most attractive frequency in existence. A person who acts with the calm, detached expectation of a king does not chase success. They draw it to them. They become a magnet because they are not vibrating with the desperation of someone who is lacking. They are vibrating with the certainty of someone who has already received. In a coastal city of unrivaled naval power, there lived a master shipbuilder named Elias. Elias was commissioned by the High Admiral to build the most resilient vessel the nation had ever seen, a ship that would brave the fiercest hurricanes of the northern sea. The Admiral watched Elias for months. He saw him carefully select the timber, treat the wood with secret oils, and lay the keel with a devotion that seemed almost religious. But one day, the Admiral grew impatient. He saw Elias sitting on the shore, watching the tide come in, while the hull was only half-planked. "Elias!" the Admiral shouted. "The season of the storms is upon us. Why are you sitting on the sand? The ship is not finished. Why are you not hammering the nails?" Elias did not rise. He simply smiled at the horizon. "The ship is finished, Admiral. It is a skeleton of wood," the Admiral cried, pointing to the incomplete hull. "The work that required my hands is done," Elias said calmly. "I have laid the keel, I have braced the frame, and I have sealed the wood according to the laws of the sea. The rest of the work, the binding, The drying, the integration of the timbers now belongs to the sea and the sun. If I force the boards now, I will crack the wood. I must let the materials breathe. I must let the laws of nature do the work that my hands cannot. A month later, the storm arrived. The fleet of the admiral, built by hurried men who had forced the timber and rushed the nails, was shattered against the rocks. But Elias's ship, the one he had allowed to cure in its own time, the one he had surrendered to the natural laws, sat buoyant in the harbor. It was stronger than any other vessel, for it had not been forced. It had been allowed to become. The admiral stood on the deck, humbled by the strength of the hull, and realized that Elias had understood a truth he had lacked. Sometimes, the most powerful form of creation is knowing when to take your hands off the work and let the laws of the universe finish the job. The embodiment of the fifth minute is the final seal on your ritual. You have built the foundation. You have drawn the blueprint. You have claimed your identity. You have set the anchor of your mission. Now, you must release the string and watch the arrow fly. As you lie in the stillness of the dawn, prepare to close the file. You are to take 3 deep, soulful breaths. With the first, inhale the certainty of your success and exhale every ounce of anxiety regarding your bills, your schedule, or your how. Let the tension drain from your shoulders. You are breaking your addiction to the struggle. With the second breath, inhale the peace of divine timing. As you exhale, release the need to know when or how the prosperity will arrive. Trust the gestation of your vision. With the third breath, inhale the power of the infinite and exhale the need for control. Say, in the silent, authoritative voice of the Master, "It is done." You are now stepping out of the portal. You are not the same entity that lay down last night. You have been calibrated, tuned, and initiated. You are ready to step into the world as a force of nature, a creator who knows that the outcome is already secured. If you truly believed that your prosperity was as inevitable as the sunrise, would you rush? Would you panic? Or would you move through your day with the calm, terrifying power of someone who already owns the future? You have completed the ritual. You have entered the brotherhood of those who know how to build from the inside out. Now, carry this frequency into the marketplace of the day. If this journey has stirred the fire of your soul, if you are truly ready to transmute your life, seal your pact with the universe one final time. In the comments, leave the password of the initiated. It is done. By doing so, you are closing the circle. You have finished the work of the morning. Now, go forth and meet the day, not as a drifter searching for bread, but as a master claiming a kingdom. The portal is closing, the sun is rising, and your reality is already rearranging itself to meet you. Wake up, step forward, and begin the manifestation. The world is yours to command.